All right, so I decided, as I mentioned last week, since it's a class on the Siddur, I want to keep to the Siddur, but we'll do Pesach related stuff. Of course, our Haggadah Yom Iyun is a week this Sunday, and then that I've sent out a couple of times, and then I'll probably send out later today or Sunday our schedule for from the Monday, March 23rd, through till the Tuesday. We'll have basically two shirim a day. That Tuesday, Erev Pesach, so that's when I talk on the God, a Divrei Torah for the Seder. But otherwise, and then please God, I'll do a podcast on that. So I figured we'll do Tefilat Tal. A number of years ago, we did Geshem, and I commented at the time that I surprisingly that most of the classic commentaries to the Siddur have nothing. They don't have Tefilat Geshem. There's no section. They have a yontif. They just don't talk about it. So I said at the time, I didn't get all the scholarly research that Geshem I think is a pretty recent addition to the Siddur. And I don't know, and the just it's not in the Otzer Tefilot, it's not in the Tzlota Davram, it's not in the Abu Draham. None of these people talk about it. It's just very interesting. Tal is the same thing, but Tal is worse because as we're going to see, Tal's harder to understand, I think, than Geshem was. So, and of course, like many of the tefillot we say once a year, people are not so familiar with them, especially when the words are very difficult. And the idea, so whatever, I think it's important. Idea we'll go through. We'll see if I don't know how much we'll do the whole thing today, but we'll see. So before we get to Tefilat Tal, which of course we say on Pesach. Geshem, we say there's a debate. They say it on Shmini Atzeret, but the Mishnah has a debate. Maybe we say the first day of Sukkot, really that's the beginning of the rainy season. But since we don't want it to rain on Sukkot, we don't say it, but we're not asking for rain. We're just mentioning rain. Okay, so that's on Shmini Atzeret. That's the accepted view. That we only begin Mashiv Ruach on Shmini Atzeret. The Tein Tal, Morida Tal. We begin on Pesach, and we discussed a while back that Ashkenazim don't say that except in Israel. I believe everybody says Mordetal in Israel, and Nusach Sfard says Mordetal. And we explained the reason, very practical reason, has to do with weather conditions. We know Israel always needs rain. That's why God chose Israel. That's the whole notion. God chose Israel that he will show his pleasure or displeasure with our activities by giving us rain. That's the second paragraph of the Shema. We say every single day. If we don't behave, God won't give rain. If we do behave, not that the I'll give rain at its proper time. He shamru and then it's not going to rain. We just mentioned that that's not an ideological problem, that Israel is the world's greatest superpower in water. We've sort of negated that notion because we don't, I don't know, but Israel doesn't really need so much rain anymore. They still need some, but because they desalinate and Israel's the world, by far the world's greatest superpower. I think they recycle, I don't know, 90% of their water. And I remember at the time looking it up, next best country is Spain at about 25%. So it's it's a different league. But that's okay. The halacha doesn't mind that. That's not a issue. Tal, but so Israel needs rain, and the Sparta countries, Islamic countries, were drier. So they would say more to tell the whole year. And you live in Canada, it rains. We're expecting more snow today, Tova, 5 to 8 centimeters of snow. But we thought we hit 20 degrees the other day, 20 degrees Celsius, and then we're back to below freezing and snow. But okay, it's the middle of March. It won't last so long. So here we don't need rain in the same way. So we don't say more Hatal all year. We only say it. And we don't say it at all. Really, we just say it in the winter. V'tein talu matar when we combine it with the wind with matar with rain. But we don't say it instead of mashiv ruach word hageshem. So I don't say more to tal. In Israel they say it. Okay, let's do a few minutes. Where's tal mentioned in the Torah? How many times is tal? Where's tal mentioned in the Torah? And then we'll discuss a little bit the difference between tal and matar. In other words, ideologically, I don't know if that's the right word.
With
Symbolic,
Gidon. With Gidon.
but get on that. I'm talking about in the Chumash.
Moshe,
Maybe
Batal
by the
Shtichtas
bond,
Hatal.
I'm sorry,
by the bond.
Batal Shtichtas.
I didn't hear Jeb. What did you say?
I think when the story of the bond comes around.
Ah, very good. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So the first mention of Tal in the Chumash, let's pull it up. I got it here for you, I believe. It is in Parsha Toldot, my Bar Mitzvah Parsha, where Yitzchak is blessing who he thinks is Esav, but of course it's Yaakov, and he says, "Ve'itein lechel mital hashamayim mishmanei haaretz v'rota gam etirosh." So it's interesting. I don't know. We're not. This is not a shir in Chumash, but you see right away he doesn't say Geshem, whatever. But Tal, there's something beautiful that God should bless you with Tal, and that's the first thing he says. Basically, he comes. He kisses him, right? And then he said, and you should have rich, the land should have a lot, and wine, dagan, and tirosh. Okay, where's the next mention of tal is by the man. So by Hiva Erev Hatal, Asla Batachas Machane, Shichvat Hatal Saviv Lamachane. But tal shikvat, they had a layer of tal on the ground, and then the layer went away. The dew, it melts. The sun comes up. This weird food that they got to eat, and the Torah says the same thing in Bamidbar. When it talks about the man, it says it more directly that the man stood on the tal. The tal was like the pot to collect all the mans, so to speak. And the other times it's mentioned in the Chumash is, we're going to talk about this in a moment, in Parshat Hazinu. Hazinu, where Moshe's last speech, so to speak, to the Jewish people, where he invokes nature as the symbol to get the Jews to listen to God. Nature always listens. The sun never deviates. The sun doesn't move, but the earth, the stars, they have a perfect orbit. They don't deviate one iota from what they're supposed to do. That's the definition of nature. And we're supposed to be the same thing as you know, Shemaim, but the Beira, but the Shema Aretz, he invokes the heavens and the earth. And Yarov Kamatar Lichi, was he like rain? It should come down. Yarov, it's a hard word to translate. We'll come back to that. Tizal, it should flow. Tizal Katali Marti, my word should flow like tal. And of course, it's a reference. I mean, symbolically, this is a reference to Torah. Gesirim Alei like the growing of the grass on the end. So this is also a very beautiful idea that it should flow like the dew is very beautiful and it's representative of Torah. And then the last time it's mentioned is is Moshe Rabbeinu in Vizot HaBracha. Do I have it here? Yeah, I have it here. So he mentions it twice. He mentions it in the bracha of Yosef, right? It's interesting, Yaakov Avinu, of course, blesses Ephraim and Manasseh. There are 12 tribes in Israel, but we don't really know who the 12 tribes are. In other words, if like Yaakov Abinu says, your two children will be like my children, so then there are 13 tribes. We just added a tribe, right? Yosef becomes two tribes, so we have 13 tribes. But we always do, there are 12 tribes. So sometimes Levi's in, and then it's Yosef because you can't have Levi and Ephraim and Ash. And sometimes Levi's out because he's a separate tribe. He's special. He's different. But it is fascinating why we don't have 13 tribes. I don't know. And if anybody has any ideas, please share with me.
I think Shimon was subsumed within Yehuda.
No. In Bezod HaBracha, Moshe doesn't bless Shimon. A lot of people don't know this.
No, but also the Nafla of Shimon was basically in Yehuda. They didn't get their own Nafla.
So it could also be because he blames
Shimon. No, but Shimon is always one of the Shvatim. Now we divide.
I know, but they don't. When you look at the Naflot, they don't get the Nafla.
No, but whenever you count 12, everybody always counts Shimon. It's only a question about Yosef and Levi. Are you counting Ephraim and Manasseh? I don't know what this Chagall Windows. I don't know what he did. I haven't been there for years. This is the Chagall window. Not that he's the posting, but I don't know if he does Yosef or does Ephraim and Manasseh. Moshe doesn't bless Shimon. That's because he's mad at them because They were the people at Epenot Michan when 24,000 people died, 8 times worse than Ched Egel. Ched Egel, 3,000 people died by as they're about to enter the land after with Bilam, and they were having relations with the woman of Michan. It was Kazbi Batsur and what's the name, and Shima, what's the other name? I forget now. It'll come to me. Is the Nasi Beit of the Shimoni. So, and if you look at the census, Shimon went from like 59,000 or something to like 25. They like in the two censuses, they're only apart by like 1,500, 603, 550. I think 601, 730. The two censuses of males over 20, when they left Egypt, 603,550 and 601,730 was the second census. It was almost the same. That's pretty amazing that in 40 years it barely changed. But within the tribes, there's some major changes. On the upside is Menashe. They loved Israel, but not Slavkar from Menashe. They went up the most, and Shimon went down the most because of the people they lost. So that's where they're not blessed. But I've never heard they're not counted as the Shvatim. So Moshe doesn't bless them, and of course Yaakov also doesn't really bless them. Yaakov cursed Shimon. Shimon and Levi. Now Shimon and Levi get divided. Shimon and Levi have a lot of energy, as we know. So Shimon used it for not such great purposes, and Levi harnessed that for much better purposes, and Levi becomes the teachers of the Jewish people. It's very beautiful. But I don't know, does anybody know why can't we have 13 Shvatim? I don't know what's so special about 12. I don't know. If we accept Yosef's notion, I don't have an answer to that question. I'm just asking. So we do different things from the 12 Shvatim. But anyways, let's go back here. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Yosef Amar, Mivarachet Hashem Artzo, his land should be blessed. You see, Tal is a very soft, beautiful idea. And then he blesses, I think at the end, if I'm not mistaken, he blesses everybody. Yeah. Vayishkon Yisrael Betach, the Jewish people should dwell in security. Please God, that should happen. Bekarov. But then in Yaakov Eretz Takam B'tirosh, in a land full of wine and wheat and beautiful things, and alone nobody bothers them. Av Shamav Ya'ar Futal. They should have the beauty of dew moist the land. It's wonderful. We don't see it right. Rain is a pain in the tuchus. Sometimes I think that's what Rashi says right here. I like to do it always in the original because so you see I'm not mistranslating. Where is it? Maybe it's not here. Yeah. Tizal Katal Shakos making bow. Everybody loves dew. Lefishamatar Yeshbo Atzevim Lebriot. If you're traveling, you're walking in the street, you don't want it to rain. Rain's a big pain. Those of us, I don't know if everybody lives in Canada agrees with me, but I prefer snow to rain. It's to walk in the snow. If it's 25 below, that's a different story. But it's a 3 below, beautiful. So I to walk in the snow is walk in the rain. Who likes that? And somebody who has his pit. If you go to Israel, see these digs, how they used to make wine, out in the open. So if it rains, it ruins the wine. So, but dew is very beautiful. So that's a very interesting thing. Rain can have a very negative idea. And that's why the Torah is always using tal as this beautiful metaphor. And I'll take it sort of a step further. I mentioned the word yaruf kamatar. What does the word yaruf mean? What does it remind you of? Anybody? Egla arufa. What's an egla arufa? You chop off the head. Taruf is like from the how do they translate? See, they're translating it in symbolic meaning, referring to Torah, right? That Moshe is, but that's not the words what they mean. I mean, they may my discourse come down as the rain. It's not really my discourse. It's come down. Yaruf is to knock down, but kemator lichi, but it should flow like tal. So the Gemara has a very interesting. I did the Gemara in Megillah in Tanit. Rava living in the 4th century in Mechoza, in Babylonia. He says, hold on. These two halves of the verse that we just saw, they contradict each other. Yarov tarlichi knock it off like the rain, very harsh. Uchtiv tizal ketal imrati, and it should flow like the dew. So the Gemara says these two are a contradiction. How does they explain it in English, my doc? In a harsh manner. Okay, harsh and gentle. Right? Matar is very, it's noisy, it's raining, whatever. Okay. So the Rav answers, Im Talmid Chacham Hakun, who, if he's a proper Torah scholar, he's Tal. And if he's a not proper Torah scholar, Orfehu Kamatar. So Orfehu Kamatar, here the English translate it, that's why you have to know Hebrew. They say, if it, not where it snaps his neck like the powerful rain. I guess that is pretty harsh. The Torah scholar's neck is snapped back. I don't exactly know what that means. He has a stiff neck, whatever. The other way, like Steingel says, it's straight out, Orfeu Kamatar, you should chop off his head, like Orfeu, like the rain gets, come down in pieces, separated from the heaven, chopped up. So you should chop off the Talmid Chacham who's not a Hagun. What does it mean to be a non-Hagun Talmid Chacham, an inappropriate Torah scholar? So the commentators have different explanations, but let me, anybody want to, we know that's the difference in a university. All you care about is a person's scholarship, their research, maybe a little, their teaching ability. That generally is a little bit less important than their research ability. But we don't care about their personal values or personal morals. That's the world works. But in Judaism, there's an idea you're not even allowed to learn Torah from a Torah scholar who's not appropriate. What that means in the modern world, that's way beyond the scope of our share, but it's really a fascinating topic. That's the question. Can you learn from, heretics? A lot of these scholars, or you have, rabbis who don't believe in the basics of Judaism, but are wonderful scholars. So that's, of course, that's I would say is a split between quote unquote what we call the modern Orthodox world and the Haredi world. Generally we follow the modern Orthodox world, whatever, for lack of a better term, follows the view of the Rambam, Kabbalah, Met Mishamur. Not the Rambam, it's not the first who says it, but of course,
Kelman.
Hold on one second. We accept truth. We don't care who says it. And other people say, no, that's a whole discussion. There's a fantastic article written by David, help me. He's the head of Orot, or he was the head of Orot. Gutel, is that his name? Nechemia Gutel, something like that.
Neria Gutel?
Yeah, Neria Gutel. He wrote a phenomenal article.
Rabbi professor.
I'm sorry?
Rabbi professor.
Yeah, so he wrote a great article on the debate between Rav Meir, who was good friends with Acher, Elisha ben Aviv, the most famous of heretics. And Rav Meir said, how can you learn with him? He's a heretic. He said, what do you think? How can you learn with him? It's like the pomegranate. I throw out the pit and I take what's sweet. I eat what's sweet. I understand what's good I take. And the other thing, based on the pasuk in Mishlei, Sifte Kohen Yishmeru Dat Utor Yivak Shemipio. The lips of the Kohen maintain our way of life, and Torah should seek Torah from his lips. Talmud says, if he's a Hashem Tzvaot, because the Lord your God is talking, if the Kohen's like Hashem Tzvaot, he's godly, he's pious, then you learn Torah. If not, you can't learn Torah. So these are two contradictory ideas. So we live with contradictions, or some put the emphasis here, some put the emphasis there, some distinguish. If you're written, who cares who the person is who wrote it? If you're learning with them one-on-one, and knowledge, all different things. But there is this idea that we see right here in the Gemara that you can have a Talmid Chacham who's inappropriate. And of course, that's worse than a regular person who's inappropriate. That has a much greater danger of causing a chilul Hashem. So without defining what that is, he learns for his own personal purposes. Yeah, Zev, what did you want to ask before I go back?
No, you just brought it up, Rabbi and Acher.
Right, exactly. See, okay, right. That's the classic case, but we have other sources that say the opposite. Well, good. That's how Judaism works. Okay, for the other time, we live with contradictions, and that's our. We have to figure out how to solve contradictions. And we don't solve them all. They're both true. I don't know in philosophy if everybody agrees with that, but I think that's a very Jewish idea. So just to show you the following piece of Gemara. So the Gemara says, if he's a Talmid Chacham, who's appropriate, his midot are good, his good character, he's honest, and unfortunately, that's not always the case. We know that's not the case. We see it with our own eyes. Then you chop his head off or whatever, or feu kamatar, snap his neck back, whatever you want to translate those words. And the next piece of Gemara says, Rabbi, and obviously the fact that they're back to back is significant. Kol osek b'Torah lishma. If you learn Torah for its the right motivation, Torah nasa lo samachayim. Torah is a potion for living. Eitz chaim hi lamachazim. It's the gift of life. We say it every time we put back the Sefer Torah. And they quote another psukim. B'chol osek b'Torah shelo lishma. Torah can become a sam hamavet. Torah is a death potion. Right, and they quote our pasuk, Yarov kamatar lichi, ve'ein arifa ela hariga. What does it mean, arifa? To kill. To kill. This is a very powerful Gemara. Shenamar varfu shama the egel. That's the egel has egla arufa. If you find a dead body, you don't know how it got there. So the elders of the nearest town, why didn't they escort him? We're responsible even if we don't do what's right. It's not enough not to do no wrong. We have to do what's right. Right? That's the egla arufa. I was passive. I didn't do anything wrong. That's the problem. You didn't do anything right. And we know evil prospers when good people say nothing. So the Gemara says that, so we chop off the head of the egla arufa, and that's what we do to a Talmid Chacham who learns Torah. Here it says Shelo Lishma. Now that's getting too much into it. That's also a difficult idea because 7 times I believe in Shas. The Gemara says whoever learns Torah Shelo Lishma, that's great. Lolam yasakatam b'Torah Shelo Lishma shemitok Shelo Lishma b'Lishma. Because if you learn Torah Shelo Lishma, you'll come to learn Lishma. We're all improv. We're no Laolam. Rav Chaim Balazhin points out. Always, nobody can be. We're human beings. Nobody can be 100% properly motivated. We all have personal agendas. That's normal. That's what means we're human. But we want to go along the scale. We're more ideally motivated for the sake of heaven. So that's great. Who cares what your motivation is, as long as you do the right thing? And here the Gemara says, no, you do it for the wrong motivation. It's a death potion. So the standard answer, Tosfot gives it all over the place. Every time they quote this Gemara, that you should always learn Torah Lishma. But what about this Gemara? So Tosfot will always say there are 2 types of Shelo Lishma. One Shelo Lishma, which is okay. You want to get it for honor. You want to get a good mark on your test. Some people should respect you. You want to become a Rosh Hashiva. You want to make money. That's not the ideal, but Baruch Hashem, nothing wrong. That's very human. You can learn Torah Shelo Lishma. The Torah Shelo Lishma that's terrible is when you do it lekanter. You want to be a critic. You have to learn enough to show how stupid the system is. You want to criticize how terrible. So there's a different type. But my point is, the Gemara uses this expression of matar, of something negative, to represent a Talmid Chacham who is not appropriate character traits. He's like matar, rain bad. And the proper Talmid Chacham is Tizal Katalim Merti. I'll just do one piece and then we'll get into the Tefilat of Tal itself. And we'll do the famous story, but why not see it inside? Rain is wonderful and we need rain. And the Gemara says we say rain in the bracha of Tchiyat HaMeitim, right? We say it in the second bracha of Shmon Esrei, Mashiv Baruch, Morid Hakasha, Matag Mechaye Meitim, Matarav Loshia, because rain is important. It's as great as Tchiyat HaMeitim, and we would all die without water. But it can be misused. So let's just very quickly, I'll show you the famous Mishnah of Choni Hamagal, right? The story. This is Masechet Ta'anit, where that Gemara was earlier in the Masechet, in the first chapter. That Gemara about Tal and Matar. This is later on in the chapter, later on in the 3rd chapter in the Mishnah, not in the Gemara, where the Gemara is going all through various reasons why we fast. So the first 2 chapters of Masechet Ta'anit say we fast when it doesn't rain. And there's a series of up to 13 fasts, depending how long the rain didn't last. And the first fast was only the Torah scholars. The next fast was everybody. The next fast was like Yom Kippur, the night before. They have this going up to 13 fasts and etc. So the Mishnah describes they would go and they daven in the town square, and then Acts 6 brachot to the Shmon Esrei, so we go from 18, that's what it was, to 24, etc. Mishana Lavram Avinu, that we say on Slichas, that's where it comes from, the origin of that. God who answered Yonah, God who answered this one, answered us. So 6 of those are mentioned in the Mishnah earlier in Tani. So here the Mishnah, and then the Mishnah gives other reasons. So it says like this. Okay, the Gemara says for any terrible thing, sarah shalotava, it's a euphemism. We don't want any bad thing to happen. We blow shofar, matrim. They blow shofar, except if it rains a lot. Rain a lot. We don't want to complain too much of rain. That's what the Mishnah begins. There's a story. They talk Choni Amagal. He's as we'll see, he's very early in rabbinic literature. We're talking before the period of the Mishnah. This is like quoting hundreds of years earlier. This is from the period of the Zugot, those 5 pairs of people between the Anshe Knesset Agdola and the Tanaim of the Mishnah. They said to him, daven that it should rain. So he says, okay, everybody, take in your it's almost Pesach, right? People who started cooking for Pesach yet, raise your hand. I don't see any hands up. Like, okay, start cooking for Pesach, but they didn't have their ovens in the house. It was out in the out in the street, out in the courtyard. It's going to get ruined. It's going to rain so much, and so fine. He davened, and actually he was a little too arrogant. It didn't work. So Masa, what he did, so he made a circle. That's why it's called Choni Hamagal. He made a circle, and he stood in the middle of the circle, and he says, God, Ribono Shalanu, your children, they've turned to me. Shani, I'm like a member of the household. I'm like, God, we're buddy. I mean, it's great. Nishbani, I'm going to take an oath in your name. I'm not leaving, God, until you have mercy on your children. So it started raining, drizzle. So Glory said, no, God, that's not it. Lokach, I didn't ask for that. Gishme borot, rain that's going to fill the cisterns and the pits and everything. Oh my God, in the cave. Ooh, it came down like a hurricane. All right, no, God, I don't want that. Blessings of beauty, of peace, right? See, okay, God listened. So everybody had to leave the hard by because it was raining. It was raining in the Beit HaMikdash. It rains. The miracle was that it never knocked out the fire. One of the 10 miracles in the temple was that it rained, the fire on the altar never got extinguished, but it rained in the temple. So he says, okay, then Ichoni says, enough, God, we have enough rain, stop. Snaps his fingers, God, stop. And he said, go tzur uim nimchat even atoim. This is a beautiful line. I know people know. Go out and see if the stone of the toim, the mistaken ones, are missing. So I forgot, I'm pretty sure the Even Tovim refers to the Beit HaMikdash was the place where the biggest lost and found. I think that's what it's referring to. I should double check, but if I remember, the biggest lost and found was in the temple. It's a beautiful idea. The temple brings Jews together. And because Jews came together, we could serve it. That people would come and yontif and, for things they lost. And the halach of how long you have to, before you can claim an object for yourself, how long do you have to announce a lost object, has to do with how long it takes for people to get home after yontif. It relates, it's all a beautiful thing, how we tie in Hashavat Aveda to the Beit HaMikdash. Anyways, see if that stone where they would stand and put the stuff high up is so much rain that it lowered the stone. I don't know how many millions of years does it take for rain till snow gets lowered. So I don't know, some exaggeration. So Shalach lo Shimon ben Shetach. So Shimon ben Shetach is, I think, the 3rd generation of Zuhad. It's a very early, 3rd century BCE, something like that. Ilmalech choni ata, if you wouldn't be choni, I would excommunicate you. Chutzpah, the way you talk to God. You sinned. You talk to God with such chutzpah, but He listens to you. Yeah, like a child. If the child sins, the father loves him, and he does it. It's a very beautiful Mishnah. But what you see, of course, is the idea of that rain is not always good. Rain can be something negative. So tal is much more positive. And with that, okay, we get into the Tefilat, and I was thinking, I don't know, I haven't seen this anywhere. Tell me if you like or don't like the idea. As we'll go, okay, Tal and Geshem are very similar patterned. I believe they're both by Rav Eliezer HaKalir, the most famous of the Paitanim, right? Living, we don't even know when he lived. That's how famous he is, right? I probably lived 7th century, 8th century. There was a view he was a Tana, one of the Tanim, but I think scholar, nobody accepts that's not a that view doesn't work. Let's put it that way. And Rav Soloveitchik, because he refers to things that later, or how many years it's been, and of course his piyutim, we know about him a lot on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We know about him a lot on Tisha B'av. Now the basically Geshem and Tel follow the same structure. If you have a Siddur, I can show you. Maybe I'll show you. You can't quite see it the way when I went to Safari, and I'm going to show it somewhere else. It doesn't really show it, but you say in Israel it's different. David will talk about why it's different in Israel in a moment. But in America, we say Tal and Geshem as part of Chazarat Hashatz. In Israel, they say it before they start Musaf. I don't like that at all. I'm sorry to say. And whenever I've been in Israel Yontif, it hurt. I love the no. How does the tune go? I'll think of it in a moment. This special, beautiful tune. Yes, Gadal, yes. Shmei Rabba. No, I don't want to confuse with Nila. Okay, it's not important. But for the whole Chazar Shatz, and you miss part of it. So you open up, and before they say Magen Abraham, they say until Melech Ozer Umashiach Umagen, and then we say a 5-line poem. This is the exact same thing in Geshem. The words are different, but the concept is the same. 5 lines that rhyme. Kridot, Lachdot, Chadot, Chadot, Toldot. Okay. Then we say Magen Abraham. Then we say Atagibor, and then we say another 5-line mini piyut. Also, that rhymes. Same thing in Geshem. Toma, Kisufim, Nitzafim, Musafim. We say it in Musaf, Sifim. And then we say the famous, and usually what happens, I don't know, in your shuls, most shuls, they do this, the traditional nusach for tal. There's a special nusach that I have to pause for a minute to try to get it. And then, and they go through here. I don't know if it's the Yosef Rosenblatt, I don't know, the famous tunes. And then usually what the Chazanim will do, or that they'll sing this modern song. I don't like that so much. What can you do? It should be a traditional type of nusach. And then we have then we have 24 lines. We have 6 stanzas. The same thing in Geshem. 6 stanzas of 4 lines each. You can look it up. And it's an alphabetical acrostic. In Geshem, it's a forward, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, and in Tal, it's backwards. Every paragraph starts with the word Tal, but okay, Tal, Tain, Shitenu, Tav, Shin, Rov, Komem. Vital. Next, right? 6 stanzas of 4. There are only 22 letters in the alphabet, so obviously the last one's going to say repeat a letter. Sadi, Pei, Ayin, Samech. Even though they do the Shin, we know in the Hebrew that goes, the letters are sort of interchangeable. Nun, Mem, backwards, and then you get to the 6, and we always end Vital. The other one ends with Geshem. Right, and then so the last one has to have an extra aleph, so you get 24 lines. Okay, and then we begin every paragraph with the word tal, and we end every word tal or Geshem. It's the exact same structure for Geshem and Tal, which obviously they're composed together. Geshem and Tal go together. Sukkot and Pesach go together. They're the 2 holidays of the year. One in the first month of the year, one in the first month of the year, one in the beginning of the year. Right, Rosh Hashanah. The beginning of the year is in Tishrei. It happens to be in the 7th month. We're weird. We begin years in the 7th month, just like I always say for that one. Canada's Day of Independence. Canada is July 1st. In America, of course, July 4th. July 1st is like Rosh Hashanah Labdil. It's the first day of the 7th month, but it's a new year. It's a new year. It's 100 and whatever, 1867 years of Canada. So that's how we work. We have the 2 calendars, Nisan and Tishrei. Nisan represents the unique Jewishness, Pesach, a unique holiday. A non-Jew is not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. Sukkot is a universal holiday. We invite all the nations of the world. The Haftorah look at themselves. All the world comes, and the temple, it's a host for everybody. Sukkot, we look out to the world. We leave our house. We go out to the world. Right? The 70 Korbanot represents 70 nations. So there's the uniqueness of being a Jew, and we're part of the world at large. That's as Rav Soloveitchik in one of his famous drashot, Ger v'Toshav by Avram Avinu. We're both Gerim. We're separate strangers, but we're Toshavim. We also have to be good Canadian citizens, American citizens. It's a little bit harder now with everything going on in the world, but still, in Russia they used to pray for the czar, so it's still. Baruch Hashem, our governments are still, the anti-Semitism doesn't come from the government, at least not in the Western world, at least not maybe here and there in Europe, but whatever. But those are the two polars. So they flow together. So they're the exact same idea. Now, why in Israel? Maybe I'll ask David, but why in Israel they do it before Musaf? In Chutz La'aretz, as we said, the minhag is we do it as part of Chazarat Hashatz only. So it's a little bit longer. Those two paragraphs by Magen Avram, they don't say it in Israel. Those two 5-line paragraphs are not said in Israel. They only do that 24-line, those 6 stanzas. For David, what do you want to say, or do you know, or
My
what did you
recollection
hear?
is I don't know, but I know that in Yeshivat Har Etzion, Rav Lichtenstein followed Rav Soloveitchik's tradition, and despite the fact that they're in Israel, they would do it the Minhag Chutz La'aretz, because
Wow.
that was a more careful reading of the first Mishnah Masechet Ta'anit. That it has to be the Baal HaMusaf, and if you haven't davened Musaf yet, then you can't do Tal.
Oh, very interesting. Wow. Right. The first Mishnah in Tanit says that the Chazan, when they switched, the first Chazan and the second Chazan, like for Pesach, you see already they had 2 Chazanim for Shachrit and Musaf. He says it. So you're saying he says it means he has to be davening Musaf already. That's a beautiful.
Correct.
I never heard that explanation. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. It's very interesting. That's obviously what I think we all grew up with, even those who live in Israel, because I think everybody here, even who lives in Israel, grew up in America. So why did they say it in Israel? So the reasons I saw, and it's a lot to do with the Vilna Gaon. A lot of things in Israel have to do with the Vilna Gaon, and I've mentioned many times, it's not that there's anything special with the Vilna Gaon land of Israel. It's for a very simple reason. As great as the Vilna Gaon is, as great as anybody is, nobody can change established practice. Minhag is much more powerful even than biblical law. We all know that. People get excited. Oh, this is my minhag. They go crazy fighting about minhag. It's really sad. Biblical law, who cares? Minhagim, people go nuts. That's why Rabbeinu Tam says minhag spelled backward is Gehenna. It's a good way to go to Gehenna, fight on minhagim. But no, he actually points that out. That's not a joke. It's unfortunate. So there's minhag Yisrael. Again, that's another halachic discussion. What do you do? What takes precedent when the minhagim when they conflict with the law? But the minhag of Klal Yisrael was to do certain things. And the Vilna Gaon, all geniuses do their own things. Rav Soloveitchik had his own minhagim. In his minyan, in Maimonides, they did like him. He didn't tell other people to do it. It creates fights. It's not normal to blow five shvarim. It's normal. That's not normal. You try 5 shvarim in the shul, the rabbi would get fired. Maybe rightfully so, right? But in Rav Soloveitchik, when they did the briskers, had some calculation why you have to do 5 shvarim. Okay, Beseder. So the thing is that in Israel it was virgin territory. How many Jews lived in Israel? 14 and a half Jews lived in Israel until the Hasidim on one hand, and the students of the Vilna Gaon in the beginning of the 1800s came to Israel. And so obviously they're the students of the Vilna Gaon, they're going to set his minhagim. So Israel, they don't say in most places, I think, Vishamru is not said, right? Is there anywhere that says Vishamru? I don't know. Baruch Hashem L'olam Amen, the Amen is not said in Israel. That's nothing to do with Israel. Nothing with Israel. That's what the Vilna Gaon would say, don't say it in Toronto or New York either. But he didn't have any power. The rabbi, the Vilna Gaon wasn't an official rabbi. Anyways, he sat in the base, right? No official position. He had no authority. He had his personality authority. And it was after his life. That's part of Chaim Soloveitchik's article that the Vilna Gaon's influence began really many years after he died. People, the Minhag HaGra. So it's for that same reason. It was a hefsek. I think that's what I saw. That the same way the Vilna Gaon says you shouldn't say b'shamru because you don't want to pause between the bracha and the Shmon Esrei Shomer Moisrael Ad, or on Friday night Haparei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Val Yerushalayim. That's a breaks up the davening. That's a hefsek. So he felt that even in the middle of the Amidah, it would make it a hefsek. That's one thing. It's not such a, we make Hafsekim all the time. Piyutim, and that was again, how much piyutim do you put in? The minhag in Europe, in Germany, I think they still do. On Shkalim, I imagine this week, right? Is anybody davening in the Yekish Shul? This week, Parshat HaChodesh, they still put in the middle of before every brach of the Shmon Esrei, they'll have a piyut that they're going to say. The first time I saw it, Zev, when I became rabbi at Bet Jacob, I had never seen it in my life. I didn't even know what was going on. The first Shabbos on Parshat Shkalim, and there, all of a sudden in the middle, all over the place, it wasn't like they started saying these Krovitz. But anyway, so that's what he didn't like. The other thing is, there's a question when you're davening Musaf, that's I guess what Rav Lichtenstein is referring to a little bit. Do you say Mashiv Haruach or Morid Geshem? You live in Toronto, you daven Nusach Sfard, let's say. So you're going to say Morid Hatal. But what do you do when you're davening your private Musaf? They're not going to switch to Morid Hatal to Chazar Hashatz. So you only switch when the Chazan switches. So the way it's generally done here, if they announce it before, so usually the Gabbai will clap on the table, especially on Shmini Tzeret. Mashiv Geshem, everybody will say it before. But people felt, no, it should be a proper announcement. You got to say the tefillah before you actually do it. So I think that's why the minhag developed that. In Israel, they do it differently than here. But it's very interesting. Every minhag has a reason, even if sometimes it's what people did. It's sometimes based on a mistake people made or a misconception. But minhag, otherwise it's not a minhag, right? A minhag and a convenience, right? Davening, now we changed the clock. Rabbi Krop last night, I was surprised that the debate already starting with plug this week. They're going to plug mincha. I wait till I don't know, whatever. What was I going to say? Right. So davening mincha early, davening Shabbos, that's not a minhag. Not a minhag, and that's why Rav Moshe writes that if the wife wants to do in traditional families, the husband went to shul and the wife stayed at home. Okay. And so the wife wants to talk to her mother or friends. The husband's not coming home till late 30. It's light. It's totally light. The husband's shul for an hour. So I don't have to accept. I don't have to light candles just because he said me more shir. So normally, husband and wife should observe this similar minhagim. They're one family. It should be consistency. The kids should see whatever. That's another question. For Moshe, right? That's not a minhag to accept Shabbos early. No, it's convenient. I don't want to eat at 9:30 at night, so I go to an early minyan. So for the husband, it's convenient to go to 7 o'clock. For the wife, it's convenient to do her cooking later, to talk on the phone. If it was a minhag, then 52 weeks a year, I'd make Shabbos early. So in the winter, I'd go to shul at 3 o'clock for mincha. Nobody does that. So that means it's a convenience. Just because you do something doesn't make it a minhag, right? That's whatever. That's a whole other subject. But those are the two different minhagim of how to say tal, which in itself is a minhag to add the tefilah tal. Okay, so let's go through. Let's start to go through it, and I'm going to start because like I said, none of the commentaries on the Siddur really explain it well. The only one who has a chapter on it that I saw, I mean, I'm sure others, the Nativ Bina, the 6-volume work of Rav Yisrael Jacobson. It's a fantastic work in the middle part, I believe, of the 20th century, early part of the 20th century. A German Jew put out a 6-volume work that I've mentioned before on the Siddur. So he has a chapter on Tal, going through it. But anyways, so I'm going to start with what they say in Israel. Maybe next we'll do those 5 stanzas. We won't do, and let's try to get through what we can. And interestingly enough, I looked at the RCA Siddur. So, and the RCA Siddur has a note that the translation is not literal. It's very beautiful. I don't have it. It's not online, as far as I know. If you see it online, let me know, and I'll show it to everybody. The English translation actually rhymes. It's a free-flowing, it's a liberal translation. They did it so it would rhyme. I think that's a beautiful thing, the same concept that it's a rhyme. Obviously, in English, if you translate, it's not going to rhyme just because it rhymes in Hebrew. And the translations are so fascinating. So I have my art scroll open now and different. The translation I liked the best, I saw the easiest, was actually on Wikipedia. So that's what I'm going to show. I'm going to pull that up now, and we can take a look at it. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Wikipedia, I think I have it here. Yeah, Wikipedia, here we go. Okay. So here's the original, and of course you have the English, and you can see, and they actually point out. You can see the alphabetical acrostic much more. They made it in bold. You see that? Okay, Tal Tain Lirtzot Artsach. Give Tal to show favor. Ritsui is like to appease, right? Appease. Basically, what Tal. Oh, so what I started to say before. I'm sorry, and I forgot to say was because Geshem has some negative connotations, and Tal is only positive. Everything about Tal is good. The Gemara even says God will do Tchias HaMeitim with Tal. The people are going to be resurrected. I don't know, Tal will, I don't know, whatever that means. But through Tal, not through Geshem, we'll have Tchias HaMeitim. So if you look, I was saying how comparable they are. The stars exactly the same, rhyming alphabet, acrostic, 5 lines, 6 stanzas. In Geshem, it's all about times in history that water was very important. So each paragraph, so the first paragraph talks about Avram, go bringing water to the angels or the wells he dug. And the next one is about Yitzchak. And then there's Yaakov crossing the river and Moshe being saved in the Teva. Every one of the Geshems is a historical event where something important, it's not really about, it's about rain, but it's more about look how water was so integral to the development of Jewish history. And I think Aaron Koino in the temple, they had to go to the mikveh before they did the service on Yom Kippur. So it's all about the importance of water towards the Jewish religious practices, or whatever you want to say. Tal, there's no direct historical references. It's only about Tal. And I think maybe that's the reason, because Tal is very good. Geshem, it's generally very good, but not always. We know, unfortunately, you have a tsunami, you have terrible things. People die in hurricanes, tornadoes, so because of the water. So it's interesting, but the Tal is all about Tal. It's clear there are hints, or read it like any poem, you read it on 2 levels. So there's the plain meaning, and then there are the references referring to many symbolic things, the building of Yerushalayim, as we'll see. So just as we start. Okay. So we ask God to give Tal to show favor to the land, so to speak, right? Shitenu bracha b'ditzach. We should have. You should bring upon us. What does he say? Make us happy. Okay, b'ditzach. Rav dagan b'tirosh. We should have much wine and grain, and we remember that's the bracha of Yitzchak to Yaakov. That Rav dagan b'titem mital shmem Rav dagan b'tirosh. So that's the first time Tal is mentioned in the Chumash. B'hafritzach, as you spread out in the land. Komeim ir, the Komeim lakum, the city. That's of course the city of Jerusalem. Komeim ir b'cheptzach, the ir you chafetz, the ir you desire. You want a lot, right? Rebuild your city with dew. So of course that's right. If you add the word Tal at the end, the beginning, right? So Tal. This, of course, is a reference to, building Jerusalem. It should flourish, but it's also, of course, a reference to, like, in its spiritual sense and physical sense. Okay. Tal tzabei shana tova umeuteret. Tal, you should command that we have a blessed year, tova, good year, muteret, with a crown, from an atara. Now, remember that Pesach, there are 4 Yom Adins, right? We all know that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Adin. That's what one of its names. But there's also Yom Hadin 3 other times a year. That's, of course, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And we mentioned a few years ago. But that's really the minhag why we say Yisker. That's how I heard. I don't know if it's from Rav Soloveitchik or not, but I heard that the reason Yisker, which is a recent about the original Yisker, was only on Yom Kippur. And I don't know when that minhag started exactly. The Yisker, that Rosh Hashanah, that Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, that's late Middle Ages, I believe. And that's, as far as I know, the Sephardim do not say it. I believe the Sephardim say it on Yom Kippur, but I'm not 100% sure. I should check into that if anybody knows. So the reason we say Yisker is because the Gemara says, you want to sin, one of the way, when we think, what is this sitting Shiva? This, the Rav says, to do tshuva. When we think of death, it motivates us to live better. We think we're immortal. So, at time, that's how we all live. We'd go nuts if we thought about that. Like, you can't live like that. But on the other hand, we need a few, even The shaila was, is that allowed? Yom Tov's a happy time. How can you say Yizkor? It's just that was the tension. The tension on the one hand, it's a happy time. We don't want to say Yizkor. That's doesn't fit. On the other hand, it's a Yom Adin. God is judging us, so we need to motivate people. That's why some people have a minhag. I'm sure many of you know. Maybe some of you observe this minhag that some people do not say Yizkor the first year when somebody dies because it's too raw. Like after 1 year, you're not really mourning anymore. The Gemara says you're not supposed to mourn more than a year. So anyway, so I think when we say Shana Tova, there's also an element, Shana Tova, like we say on Rosh Hashanah, because it is Nisan is of course a new year, but it's also we're judged on grain on Pesach ala Tuah. Atzeret, that's Shavuot, we're judged on Perot Heilan, on the fruit, and that's why we bring Bikurim on Shavuot, and that's why we bring the Korban HaOmer on Pesach. That's supposed to be the way we miratzeh, we find favor with God. And Sukkot, we're judged on water, and that's why we bring the Such HaMayim, we pour the water libations. So those are the three additional Yemei Adin. The question is, so what's left for Rosh Hashanah? That's not for another. What do you mean about with the world? Like you're going to get 0.04% of this, and then how much the world's going to get is decided on Pesach. That's not for now. But anyway, so that's the Shana Tova is not just of course it means it should be a good year, it should rain, but I think it has a deeper significance. Priya Aretz. The fruit of the land should be likaon, beautiful. Like likaon, we think of a genius should be great, outstanding, tiferet, beautiful, pe'er, beauty, right? They turn to pride and glory. Okay, and we know that the Mishnah in Sota says that one of the signs of the Mashiach is when they have nice Jaff oranges. They don't use those words, but the Mishnah in Sota says that, even though we don't know when Mashiach is coming, you're not supposed to speculate. I'm very much in the view of the Rambam. When it happens, we'll know. Don't waste your time on this. It's a total waste of time. We've spoken about that in the past. Nonetheless, the Mishnah in Sota does say the signs of the Messianic period is the great fruit in Israel. That's what a lot of people say was going on today, whatever. Okay. Ir kesuka noteret sima biadcha ateret. The city it's a funny thing, kesuka. So they translate it as a rune. Let's see, how does Art Scroll translate that word? The city deserted like a bird. They added the word deserted, which is right, because that's a reference. Yerushalayim was Echa Yashva Badar Kalmana. So the city that's like a sukkah, like it's a sukkah represents the temporary nature of life. We want a Sukkot Shalom. We need peace, more Sukkot Shlomecha. We need the full peace because the Sukkah's here today, gone tomorrow. It's blown away by the wind. So it represents weakness. That's the whole idea of Sukkot. That man is weak. Our home doesn't protect us after Yom Kippur. Only God protects us. But in this sense, there's a negative. On Sukkot, there's a positive. We put our trust in God. God will prosalenu Sukkot Shlomecha. But in the real world, going out in the Sukkah is very, very frightening. So we're asking the city that was like a week, like a Sukkah, should be ateret, should be beautiful. Like we had in the first paragraph, an atara, of course, is a crown, should be beautiful. Okay, that's the second paragraph. Now we're up to tal no faith. It should flow, right? Flow ale aretz brucha. I mean, the language, I don't, I'm not as poetic as I should be, right? Tal faith, the language sounds very beautiful and poetic. No faith ale aretz brucha. It should flow on the blessed land, right? So on the blessed land, or I thought you could interpret it, the tal should make the land blessed. In other words, the land of Israel is blessed, so we're asking God put tal, right? We need tal. I mean, the more on the drier the climate, the more they need it. I was looking up the science of dew, and I understand a little more, but dew doesn't do it. It has to do with the scientists here can explain better the condensation when at night. When the weather drops, so grass and stuff, the weather drops immediately. Like the sidewalk doesn't get cold, the heat is retained. It takes a lot longer, but your grass gets colder much quicker. So the condensation, that's the dew that forms. That's why the dew will form on grass, but it won't form on the sidewalk. That's if that makes sense. But anyways, tal depends on where it is, and it has to do with basically changes in the climate, quick changes in the climate. But so we can say tal should fall on this blessed land, or when tal falls, it makes the land blessed. Okay. Mimeget Shemaim Savenu Bracha, from the heavens, we should Savenu, we should be satiated with blessings, right? Vachalta v'sabata uberachta. Yes, it's here, sabata uberachta. And of course, the Tal will allow us to have achalta. And part of that blessing is that, we know that you should be satisfied with what you eat. In other words, we should eat to be satisfied, but some people, they're satisfied to take any area of life, right? Money, anything, what makes somebody satisfied? The great bracha is when we don't need so much to be satisfied, that whatever we eat, and then we can bless. But okay, la'ir mitoch chashecha. So that's very interesting. What's this doing here? That it should light up. Tal doesn't bring light, but the idea is that the dew lets the land, the moisture helps to grow, and that brings light. Whether that's it gives beauty to the land. The darkness of land, of course, also means, I think, very much in a spiritual sense. Yerushalayim, it's what they're saying, was empty and deserted, like a sukkah, weak. And when you see the land growing, I mean, that's how we know. We know for 2,000 years, nobody made the land grow. I mean, the greatest thing the early Zionists did is they turned the desert. They made the desert bloom. That's the great secret of okay, the great what the early settlers of the land did. I mean, Israel was a wasteland, a total wasteland. We sometimes we're too young, a little bit of us. Remember, what people did is unbelievable. The planting of trees, and they swamped. They got the malaria, everything, rid of it. So that's the land was dark, and we have to bring light. Kana acharecha mishucha. So what is kana? I actually mentioned that word in my podcast this week, if anybody wants to listen, when I talk about nasata v'natata be'emunah. So the word, right, emunah means faith, usually a relationship to God. Honesty, like nasata v'natata, business, you don't expect the word emunah, you expect the word yashrut, in straightness, or kenimatem, where Yosef said to the brothers, if you are kenim, if you are honest, you're going to go home. I'm going to keep Shimon here, back to Shimon, right? He knew already what Shimon's a troublemaker. I'll keep Shimon. You go back and get Binyamin if you're honest. And the brothers say, we're kenim, we're not miraklim. So kana acharecha mishucha. So bring light to those who are honest and follow you. In other words, a reference to the Jewish people. That we're saying that God kanacharecha mishucha, that also can have two meanings. That they follow you, the honest ones, the Jewish people. That's what it's referring to. Acharecha, after you, mishucha, they're pulled to you. They love you. The Jewish people love you, and therefore you should reward us. Bring tal. It should have light on the land. Yeah, I just want to see if there's another way. I think I had another way I could read that. Satiate now with blessing. Okay, I don't know. I forget. Okay, fine. Then the next line, Tal Asis Suf Harim. It should make big sweetness. That suf is a reference to honey, I believe. Harim, the mountains, the flowing, should flow down with beauty, the streams coming from the mountains, like ta'am, the taste, bimodecha mufcharim. So again, I think mufcharim, it could bring the best of fruits, the best of it. Israel is a land, Eretz Avat Chalav U'Dvash, beautiful fruits, the Shivat Minim. We praise the land of Israel because it has great olives. I don't like olives, but it has pomegranates and grapes and wheat and barley and, beautiful, the Shivat Minim, dates, date honey, whatever. So that's one thing, Tam Bimodech, it should give beautiful taste to the fruits of the land, but it could also be referring to the Jewish people. The Jewish people are the chosen ones. There's a special relationship. God should bring beauty to the Mufkarim, the Jewish people. And I think the next line sort of goes with that well. Chanunecha chalates mimiskarim. Those who you have pity on, you or chanun, the chain, kindness, whatever. Chain v'chesed rachim chalates, let them go free, like a chalitza. The chalates mimiskarim, they're tied in, they're being held captive. So let them go free, which is why I think it sort of flows. The move karim is not so much the fruit. You could say the fruit are stuck in the ground, they can't go, they have no room, let them grow, okay. But it could also mean, of course, and of course it means both, the Jewish people, and then Zimra Ne'aim B'Kol Narim, and therefore we can sing to you. God, when you redeem us and redeeming the land, basically what we're saying, redemption of the land, the redemption of the people go hand in hand. Na'im B'Kol Narim, we'll call out to you just like we do on Pesach. You know, we cross the sea, we call out Hallel to God. And then Tal V'Sova Malei Asmena. This is the last. Tal V'Sova should be filled. Sova Malei Asmenu. All our silos should be filled. HaKe'et. Right now, Ke'et. Immediately. To Chadesh Yemenu. Chadesh Yemenu Kekedem. Bring us back to the great days of old. Chadesh Yemenu Kekedem. Dod, our friend. Ke'erchacha Ma'amid Shamenu, right? God is our friend. That's what we're saying, right? It's all like by Choni Magal or something. Ma'amid Shamenu, let the heavens be set up properly. Gan Rabeh Shemenu, it should flow. The land should be like a Gan Rabeh, a beautiful garden, a luscious garden with tal. Okay, we'll pick up, please, God, next week. We'll finish the last paragraph, maybe do the other two things we missed, but just let's quickly review. We discussed the difference between tal appears basically 4 or 5 times in the Chumash by Yitzchak to Yaakov, by the man, by Moshe Rabbeinu blessing the Shvatim, blessing Yosef, and it's all very beautiful. And Yarov Katal Imrati, right? Tal is always very good. Geshem, sometimes negative. The Gemara even uses that as an example for Torah scholars who are negative, don't have the right midot, they're like rain, that's terrible. And they should be chopped off, or you have the tal is the beauty. And then we showed the structure of the poetry, how it works. We discussed why in Israel they maybe do it before, do it after. One focuses on historical events, one focuses on the beauty of the tal, the alphabetical cross, going forward or going backward. And then we started going through all the beautiful things that we ask, we pray for God for tal. And also it's a reference to the land and the reference to the people. Okay, I got to run. We please God, we'll see you next week. All our shiurim, of course, Sunday, Rabbi Leaptag, all our regular shiurim next week, and the week after we'll start with our Pesach learning. Okay, Shabbat Shalom should be a Shabbat Shalom. Be peaceful. Hopefully you don't have to go with any miklats or anything like that. Then we should hear good news, and all the best. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Bye-bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.